Welcome to Occult Mysticism, your path to higher consciousness. Today, we explore Waking Up in 5D, a practical guide to multidimensional transformation by Maureen J. Germain, a guide to navigating the fifth dimensional shift. Join us as we unlock these transformative insights. Subscribe for more esoteric wisdom. In the grand and solemn theater of human spiritual evolution, there arise, at pivotal junctures of history, certain literary works that are not merely contributions to the ongoing dialogue of mankind, but are, in and of themselves, acts of profound initiation. They emerge from the unseen realms into the stream of temporal affairs at precisely the moment of greatest need, serving as nothing less than sacred fulcrums for a fundamental and irreversible shift in the consciousness of the race. These are not simply books to be read and intellectually assimilated, they are living manuals to be practiced and embodied, architectural blueprints for the deliberate construction of a new and higher order of human being. Into this rare and hallowed category of revelatory literature must be placed the monumental treatise entitled Waking Up in 5D, a practical guide to multidimensional transformation. Authored by Maureen J. Germain, this volume presents itself not as a consoling philosophy for a troubled age, but as a direct and unflinching charter for the soul's conscious ascent, a celestial map and mariner's compass for the meticulous navigation of that profound passage from one state of reality to another. It stands as a courageous and luminous declaration that the long-prophesied destiny of humankind is not some far-off millennial event to be passively awaited, but a dynamic and presently available potentiality to be actively, consciously, and willfully chosen. The author addresses the reader with a deep and abiding respect, not as a peripheral spectator in the cosmic drama, but as a vital and indispensable protagonist, a sovereign co-creator whose most sacred and immediate vocation is nothing less than the conscious and deliberate manifestation of heaven upon the earth. To engage with such a work, therefore, requires a posture that transcends the cool, dispassionate analysis of the academic. It demands the earnest and solemn reverence of the true and dedicated seeker, one who understands with every fiber of their being the principles contained within these pages represent far more than ink on paper. They are, in truth, a living transmission of potent spiritual technologies, the very keys and vibrational codes for a personal and collective transfiguration of the most profound order. The foundational revelation upon which this entire magnificent edifice of thought is erected is a radical and liberating re-envisioning of the cosmos, one that defines the very fabric of reality not in the familiar terms of physical location, but in the subtle and more fundamental terms of vibration. The author, with an immediate and compelling lucidity, dismantles the conventional materialistic worldview, presenting the dimensions not as separate and discrete places in the vastness of space, but as unique and interpenetrating frequencies of consciousness, nested one within the other like the concentric, transparent layers of a Russian doll. Our familiar world, the third dimension, the realm we have long considered the sole arbiter of the real, is meticulously characterized as the plane of linear time, of the seemingly inexorable and rigid logic of cause and effect, and most significantly, of the great and engrossing drama of polarity, the ceaseless play of good versus evil, light versus darkness, self versus other. It is the plane of profound forgetting, a divinely sanctioned quarantine of sorts, where the soul can immerse itself fully in the potent illusion of separation from its divine source in order to learn through contrast and limitation. The fifth dimension, the glorious and immediate destination of this transformative journey, is revealed not to be a posthumous paradise or a distant star system to be reached by technological means, but a state of being, a frequency of consciousness that can be attained and fully inhabited here and now within the vessel of the physical body. It is the very frequency of unconditional love, a reality in which fear is an utter impossibility and a boundless, pervasive compassion is the very atmosphere that one breathes. To awaken in the fifth dimension, therefore, is not an act of travel, but an act of attunement. It is a meticulous and conscious process of recalibrating one's personal energy field to resonate in perfect harmony with this higher, finer, and more subtle vibration. Bridging these two distinct states of existence is the crucial, powerful, and often turbulent fourth dimension. This is the astral plane, the realm of pure and intensified emotion, the dream realm made manifest. It is a transitional vortex, a powerful and fluidic current of consciousness that, if navigated unconsciously, can pull the unsuspecting soul downward into the chaotic maelstrom of its lower octaves, the shadowy realms of collective human trauma, of unresolved grief, of fear-based thought forms, and of discarnate entities that feed upon such energies. Yet, if traversed with conscious mastery and a heart firmly centered in the frequency of love, this very same emotional current can become a gentle and supportive whirlwind, spiraling the soul upward with grace and exhilarating ease, delivering it gently into the luminous, serene, and blissful reality of fifth-dimensional awareness. A thorough and deeply internalized understanding of this fundamental spiritual cartography is the first and most essential prerequisite for the modern mystic. For one cannot hope to consciously pilot the precious vessel of the soul through these subtle and powerful realms without a clear, accurate, and trustworthy map of the terrain. For this momentous and often challenging navigation from the known to the unknown, a primary and indispensable instrument is provided, a veritable master key that turns the lock on every other door of esoteric understanding and empowers every other spiritual practice delineated upon this path. This is the establishment of a conscious, unwavering, and direct line of communication with one's higher self. The author meticulously delineates the critical and life-altering difference between the lower, personality-based self and this magnificent, eternal aspect of our being. The lower self, the familiar ego construct through which we typically operate in the world, is described as intuitive yet fundamentally reactive, its perceptions and reactions forever colored and often distorted by the endless catalog of the ego's fears, desires, aversions, and deeply ingrained judgments. In stark and magnificent contrast, the higher self is presented as that proactive, omniscient, and sovereign part of our consciousness which remains in a state of perpetual and direct communion with the divine source. It exists ahead of the linear stream of time, offering a perspective of perfect, untroubled clarity, a viewpoint unclouded by the mists of fear, doubt, or judgment. To forge a reliable and unbreakable link with this indwelling oracle is, as the text so powerfully and accurately states, the ultimate game-changer in the spiritual life. To this noble and most urgent end, a specific and rigorous spiritual technology is prescribed, a structured and disciplined practice designed with divine precision to guide the earnest seeker from the shifting sands of mere belief and intellectual trust to the adamantine bedrock of absolute, direct, experiential knowing. This higher self practice is an esoteric discipline built upon a foundation of 7 sacred and inviolable agreements, which are to be maintained with monastic dedication for a probationary period of no less than 45 consecutive days. The practice commences with a sincere and heartfelt request for the higher self to provide clear, unique, and unmistakable personal signals for yes, no, and neutral. For the entire duration of this sacred period, the aspirant must then exercise the profound discipline of asking only yes or no questions, and this is a point of the most critical and subtle importance. These questions must be of a trivial and insignificant nature, concerning mundane matters to which the ego has no significant emotional attachment, such as the choice of a travel route or an article of clothing. This deliberate and sustained focus on the seemingly unimportant systematically starves the ego of its compulsive need to control the outcome, thereby allowing a pure and untainted trust in the inner voice to organically form. The third and most demanding, yet most vital, of these agreements is to then act upon the guidance received without hesitation, without internal debate, and without a single exception. It is through this sustained and courageous act of willing and faithful obedience to the inner oracle that the channel of communication is scoured of the psychic debris of doubt and interference, and is thereby strengthened into a powerful and reliable conduit for divine wisdom. Furthermore, the seeker must resolutely abstain from asking questions of great personal import, or those which are predictive in nature, for these invariably engage the ego's deep-seated anxieties and its insatiable desire to measure and validate its own progress. Finally, and of profound esoteric significance, is the agreement to suspend completely the use of all other external forms of divination, be it pendulums, kinesiology, tarot cards, or any other such tool for the entire practice period. This is done not to invalidate these ancient and honorable tools, but to ensure that the subtle yet powerful spiritual muscle of direct inner communion is exercised exclusively, allowing the line of communication to the higher self to be established in its purest and most unadulterated form, free from all external static and potential interference. This rigorous training is nothing less than a technology for attuning the inner ear to the subtle yet unmistakable frequency of one's own indwelling divinity, a communication that may at first manifest as a faint and fleeting physical sensation, a sudden prickling of the skin, a wave of goose flesh, a metallic taste upon the tongue, but which will, through disciplined and unwavering practice, blossom into a clear, constant, and unerring inner compass. This profound journey into the higher frequencies of being necessitates a parallel and equally profound evolution in the very mechanics of human thought. The consciousness of the third-dimensional human is, by its very design and function, imprisoned within the rigid and confining framework of linear thinking. It perceives reality as a single, immutable, and sequential timeline, a world in which a fixed and unchangeable past dictates a singular and seemingly predetermined future through the inexorable and unforgiving logic of cause and effect. This is the mind of polarity, a cognitive operating system that functions by relentlessly dissecting and categorizing the seamless, holistic flow of experience into the artificial and ultimately illusory binaries of good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. This mode of thought, while historically useful and even necessary for navigating the dense and complex material plane, ultimately functions as a cognitive cage, imprisoning the consciousness within a painfully narrow and limited perception of what is real and what is possible. To awaken in the fifth dimension is to shatter the very bars of this cognitive prison, and to embrace with joyful abandon what the author so aptly and powerfully terms a dynamic view of reality. This is nothing less than the awakening of a multilinear consciousness, a form of perception that recognizes with startling and liberating clarity that from the sacred nexus point of every present moment, a veritable infinity of probable futures radiates outward, not as a single, predetermined road, but as the infinitely branching and beautiful limbs of a great cosmic tree. It is to comprehend the mind-altering but deeply empowering teaching that with every significant choice we make, alternative and parallel timelines are indeed created, and that other, equally real versions of our own soul are, at this very moment, experiencing the full consequences of the paths we did not choose to take in this particular stream of reality. This momentous and revolutionary perceptual shift is not merely a philosophical concept to be abstractly entertained. It is a practical and attainable skill, one that is cultivated by a conscious and deliberate change in the very language of our inner and outer inquiry. The linear mind of the third dimension, when confronted with an undesirable circumstance, reflexively and habitually asks, "Why is this happening to me?" or "Whose fault is this?" Questions that are inherently designed to assign blame, to reinforce a narrative of victimhood, and to keep the individual locked in a cycle of powerless reactivity. The dynamic and liberated mind of the fifth dimension, however, poses a far more expansive, creative, and empowering question. I wonder what is going on here. This simple but profoundly transformative pivot from the limiting language of judgment to the infinite language of wonder swings open the door from the closed and airless room of a single, fixed perspective into the boundless, sunlit, and multifaceted field of pure and unadulterated possibility. This evolved cognitive mastery extends even to the radical and astonishing notion that the past itself is not immutable. The text affirms with serene confidence that through advanced and focused spiritual work, it becomes possible to journey back along the intricate and interwoven timelines of consciousness, to revisit the pivotal and often traumatic choice points of past incarnations, and from a newfound place of higher wisdom and compassion, to make new and more loving decisions, thereby healing ancient wounds at their very source and fundamentally rescripting the entire energetic fabric of one's present reality. We are thus being taught that the great Akashic field is not a static and dusty library of fixed and unchangeable history, but is, in truth, a living, breathing, and flowing ocean of conscious potentiality, and we are being initiated into the sacred and long-forgotten art of becoming the masterful and sovereign navigators of its timeless and powerful currents. At the very core of this multidimensional alchemy, at the fiery center of the hermetic crucible where the dense lead of the old, fear-based self is systematically transmuted into the luminous gold of the new, love-based being, lies the sacred, powerful, and often misunderstood realm of human emotion. The author posits with great conviction and clarity that our emotions are the potent creative fuel of all manifestation, They are the medium through which the formless, neutral life force of Qi is qualified, colored, and directed. It is our emotional body that functions as our primary and most sensitive perceptual organ in the subtle realms of consciousness, the faculty that serves as a hypersensitive antenna, reading the subtle and invisible energetic signatures of our environment and signaling truth or falsehood, safety or danger, love or hostility, with a speed and accuracy that far outstrips the comparatively clumsy and sluggish capacities of the analytical mind. It is through the powerful and energetic gateway of intensified emotion that we must pass in order to traverse the fourth dimension, with the very quality and intensity of our feelings determining whether we ascend into higher states of being or descend into lower ones. In the old paradigm of the third dimension, the potent creative energies of so-called negative emotions, fear, anger, rage, disappointment, and blame, have been systematically and insidiously harvested by unseen forces and agendas that would seek to hold the human collective in a state of limitation and spiritual amnesia, manipulating humanity through its own powerful, unconscious, and misdirected creative potential. The great and noble initiatory task of the modern spiritual warrior is to reclaim absolute sovereignty over this sacred creative fire, to cease being a helpless puppet pulled by invisible emotional strings, and to become the conscious and benevolent master of the inner world. This profound mastery is never, and can never be, won through the cold, barren, and self-violent path of emotional suppression, for unexpressed emotion is a subtle venom that poisons the soul from within, creating energetic blockages that lead to physical and psychological disease. Rather, this mastery is achieved through the courageous and transformative practice of radical observation and compassionate, non-judgmental acceptance. One learns to fully and fearlessly experience the searing pain of a betrayal, to acknowledge the cavernous depths of a disappointment without identifying with the feeling, and then to consciously and lovingly take that potent and volatile charge of energy and move it through the transmuting fire of the open heart, flooding it with the unconditional love and divine forgiveness that is our most essential and authentic nature. In a brilliant and deeply empowering reframing of personal suffering, the author declares with startling force that a blow to the heart, that shocking and unexpected moment of deep pain, often inflicted by a loved one, is to be seen not as a personal tragedy or a cruel setback, but is in fact rocket fuel for your ascension. It presents the soul with its most profound and challenging initiatory test to demonstrate the heart's highest and most divine capacity, which is to remain fully open and loving in the face of that which would most powerfully compel it to close forever. To pass this sacred test is to achieve a true quantum leap in the evolution of one's consciousness. And fear, that ancient and seemingly monolithic tyrant of the human psyche, is unmasked and revealed to be not a monstrous and implacable adversary to be vanquished, but a faithful and benevolent messenger to be honored and understood. Its true and sacred purpose is not to paralyze, but to alert. It is a divine alarm system created by the profound wisdom of the emotional body to signal a critical misalignment between our thoughts, our words, or our actions, and our soul's highest truth and integrity. The masterful and enlightened response to the arising of fear, therefore, is not to recoil from it, nor to attempt to forcefully overcome it, but to turn and face it with serene and unwavering courage, to ask it directly and with genuine respect, "What is your sacred message for me at this time?" In courageously and humbly receiving its hidden and often surprising wisdom, we are empowered to make the necessary and life-affirming course corrections and thereby dissolve its power over us, transforming it from a dark and confining prison of terror into a luminous and liberating key of self-realization. This profound and often demanding labor of inner transformation is not meant to be a solitary and unsupported struggle. We are assured with great warmth and encouragement that humanity is being graced at this critical juncture in its evolution with a magnificent and comprehensive armamentarium of practical tools and benevolent otherworldly allies, all divinely provided to ease, support, and accelerate this unprecedented planetary transition. The great work of ascension is presented not as a lonely path of individual effort, but as a grand and joyous cooperative venture between the worlds of the seen and the unseen. We are thus introduced to the majestic and powerful presence of the dragons, ancient and profoundly wise beings whose very name, we are told, is derived from the ancient etymological root meaning to see clearly. These are not the fearsome, fire-breathing beasts of destructive Western mythology, but are instead noble, powerful, warm-blooded, fourth-dimensional elementals who have returned to our sphere of reality after a long absence to assist humanity with the critical and timely tasks of cultivating clear communication, ensuring safe and unimpeded passage through the world, and developing the vital spiritual faculty of discerning absolute truth from the pervasive and often convincing fog of modern illusion and disinformation. We are urged to call upon these noble and powerful allies by their sacred names, which they will reveal to us in the quiet of meditation, to invite their potent assistance in clearing congested roadways, in guarding our journeys by air with their protective energy, and in bestowing upon us the sharp and penetrating clarity of vision needed to navigate the manifold complexities of our lives with wisdom and grace. Working in perfect and harmonious concert with these magnificent dragons are the delightful and whimsical beings known as the Serendipities. These are the celestial agents of divine synchronicity, the invisible and joyful weavers who meticulously choreograph the meaningful coincidences, the happy accidents, the fortunate encounters, and the chance discoveries that so beautifully and magically confirm when we are living our lives in perfect alignment with the divine and benevolent flow of the universe. To actively recognize their subtle and playful handiwork in the tapestry of our daily lives is to consciously open and activate the 10th chakra and to thereby enter into a continuous and sustained state of effortless, grace-filled, and joyful manifestation. Yet, the most potent and advanced spiritual technology offered in this work for the dedicated aspirant of this new age, the veritable chariot of fire for the soul's ascent, is the multidimensional 5D Merkaba meditation. This is a significant and powerful evolution of the classic 17-breath sacred geometry meditation, a new and more highly calibrated vehicle of light, meticulously and divinely designed to anchor the seeker's consciousness firmly and stably in the higher frequencies of the fifth dimension. This beautiful, elegant, and intricate practice is a profound symphony of focused visualization and sacred intention. It commences with the raising of a spinning, bipyramidal flower of life sphere, glowing with the colors of teal and gold, from the physical heart chakra up through the central column to the 8th chakra, located a hand's length above the crown of the head, thereby establishing this higher energetic center as the new and true seat of unconditional love. From this powerful anchor point, a radiant, luminous, hourglass-shaped energy field is formed, a field that mirrors a perfect golden etheric body in the dimensions above the physical form. In a stunning and powerful maneuver, the apex points of the inner sun and earth tetrahedrons then invert and extend, radically elongating the central pranic tube and flinging open the energetic portals to the higher dimensional chakras, from the 9th all the way to the 12th, connecting the individual directly to the cosmic divine superhighway. This advanced and sacred practice, we are assured, is far more than a simple relaxation technique or a method for inducing a temporary state of meditative peace. It is a fundamental and permanent restructuring of the entire human energy field. It is a powerful activation that meticulously builds the energetic capacity and the vibrational container required to receive, to integrate, to hold, and to stably embody the higher and finer frequencies of the fifth dimension for sustained and continuous periods, thereby transforming the practitioner from a passive and often bewildered observer of the great planetary shift into a conscious, powerful, and effective agent of its glorious and inevitable manifestation. The grand synthesis of these profound and life-altering teachings culminates in a courageous and unequivocal clarion call for the complete and utter dismantling of two of the most deeply and rigidly entrenched pillars of the old world paradigm, the concepts of karma and polarity. The author delivers the stunning, world-altering, and liberating proclamation that the great cosmic cycle of karma, as humanity has known it, has been brought to its definitive conclusion. The soul of humanity is no longer inexorably chained to the relentless, grinding, and often unforgiving wheel of retributive justice, no longer fated to reincarnate lifetime after lifetime in an endless and often agonizing cycle of balancing the energetic debts of the past. This extraordinary and unprecedented act of divine grace, however, is not a license for spiritual apathy or moral complacency. On the contrary, it is a divine summons to a new and far more immediate form of profound personal responsibility. It places the full and complete onus for one's energetic state squarely and irrevocably in the sacred and sovereign territory of the ever-present moment of now. If we choose, even for an instant, to cling to our well-worn judgments, if we hold another soul in the energetic prison of our blame for a past hurt or perceived transgression, it is we, and we alone, who are single-handedly perpetuating that obsolete karmic pattern, and thereby binding our own precious souls to the very energy we so righteously condemn. To be truly and completely free, we must release all others from the kangaroo court of our personal judgment, not as an act of magnanimous charity, but as a non-negotiable and absolute requirement for our own spiritual liberation. This profound and radical act of release leads directly and inexorably to the transcendence of polarity itself. The entire experiential reality of the third dimension has been meticulously constructed upon the dynamic and often violent tension of duality, of good versus evil, of light versus darkness, of right versus wrong, of self versus other. The new, unified, and holistic reality of the fifth dimension is one that exists entirely beyond this fractious and exhausting duality. This does not signify a descent into a gray and lifeless state of moral relativism, but rather a glorious and exhilarating ascent into a state of being so completely and blissfully saturated with the presence of divine love that the not God choice, the choice for separation, for harm, for fear, for limitation, simply ceases to be a conceivable, let alone an attractive, option. It represents a profound and long-awaited spiritual maturity, a state in which ethics are no longer an external and burdensome code of conduct to be obeyed, or fear of punishment or hope of heavenly reward, but are instead the intrinsic, spontaneous, effortless, and joyful expression of one's own, deeply and completely realized loving and divine nature. We are given the radical and hope-filled teaching that the energetic balance of the world no longer requires a great and terrible darkness to offset a great and brilliant light. We are told that now only a homeopathic dose of negativity is required to maintain the dynamic equilibrium of the whole. Our most sacred and urgent duty, therefore, is to cease feeding the alligators of this world, the purveyors of fear, division, and despair, with the potent and creative fuel of our precious attention, our fear, and our righteous outrage. Instead, we are called to focus with a singular and unwavering intent upon cultivating, expanding, and radiating the divine light within our own hearts, knowing with an absolute and unshakable faith that the perfect, all-encompassing, and unconditional love of the divine is the ultimate and final power that will gently, lovingly, but inevitably consume all remaining shadows from this earth. Ultimately, and in its most essential and enduring expression, Waking Up in 5D just stands as a magnificent and deeply inspiring ode to the sovereign power of the individual human will and the infinite, untapped, and glorious potential of the human heart. It is a work that systematically and lovingly deconstructs the psychological and energetic architecture of victimhood and provides in its place a detailed, practical, and accessible blueprint for a life of empowered, joyful, and conscious co-creation. It serves as a sacred and constant reminder, a beacon in the often confusing twilight of our times, that each new day, each new breath, each new moment, we are gifted with a clean slate, that we are not now and never have been the prisoners of our past, but are in truth the supreme and sovereign artists of our present and future reality. Through the profound and multi-layered wisdom contained within its pages, we are meticulously and patiently guided to rewrite the very foundational narratives and limiting stories that have shaped and confined our lives. We are taught to consciously and lovingly author a new and more expansive story for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and for our world. A story founded on the unshakable principles of compassion, integrity, and the joyful and certain expectation of miracles. It is a powerful and direct call to bless every aspect of our existence, from the food we eat to the daily tasks we perform, to bless all our interactions, to actively and intentionally seek and acknowledge the breathtaking beauty and divine intelligence that permeates the natural world, to speak a new language of radical empowerment, and to navigate the course of our lives from a heart that has been rendered through conscious practice simultaneously fearless, compassionate, and eternally open. This is the great and holy work of our time. This is the singular and magnificent adventure of the soul's journey home, the sacred alchemical process of transmuting the dense and heavy lead of a fear-based separation consciousness into the pure, brilliant, and incorruptible gold of a love-based unity reality. The great spiritual wake-up call for humanity has been sounded, and for those precious souls whose hearts are prepared and willing to hear its sacred summons, this luminous and timely text serves as the clearest, most practical, and most inspiring of responses. A definitive and comprehensive guide for the profound remaking of the self, and through the glorious and triumphant transfiguration of the self, the sacred remaking of the world. It is not merely a map to a distant and hoped-for destination. It is a living and vibrating key to an imminent and most glorious dawning, the dawning of the fifth-dimensional human. Thank you for diving into Waking Up in 5D with Occult Mysticism. Share your experiences below and connect with our community. Like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more multi-dimensional wisdom. Until next time, keep awakening.